guys, it's me Blue again, and I'm going to go through Leichter's updated deck list. So again, Leichter was done a long time ago, back in the big 12 Decks of Christmas release. The Big Five was there, Tristan was there, Duke was there. We had a bunch of characters there from, Battle City and the Virtual World, primarily. Fun fact about Leichter's deck is I built a version of it even before that wave, before the channel, really. Being one of my favorite characters. I love the Leichter duel. I love Jinzo as one of my favorite monsters. It is one of my favorite monsters. Somewhere I have pictures because I wouldn't stop drawing Jinzos when I was in class. Because, paying attention to classes for losers. Drawing Jinzos was cool. Anyway, so this would actually probably be the third, I'd say, really the 2.5 version of Leichter, because we built it a long time ago for the channel, rebuilt it actually with the rest of the Big Five, and now this is the modified version. I mean, Leichter played a lot of cool monsters, and I mean, of all the Big Five, I'd like to think his strategy was very well thought out, because as you see us going through the deck profiles, they all had a strategy, some debatably more thought out, more thorough than others. But what's interesting about the Big Five is that they were all pretty good duelists. And I don't mean that, they were like necessarily Yugi or Kaiba, because they all lost in the end. But it's not like they were just, thrown aside by the heroes. They were all back and forth games, and they stood a good chance. They actually played, through a whole duel. So I think it's funny how these big executives from this, what was a military corporation before it became a duel monsters corporation, actually, I guess through their exile in the virtual world, became good at duel monsters. So it's kind of funny that, these people who you wouldn't expect to really essentially play Yu-Gi-Oh cards are actually good enough in Yu-Gi-Oh cards that they did pose a threat to the heroes. Alright, so again, without further ado, Leichter's updated deck profile. 2 Cyber Jars. Despite being a card he played, we've kept it at 2 because we have tried in his deck at one point and in one version of the Battle City Keith deck. We have 3 Cyber Jars, and it always ends up being a mess because Cyber Jar tunnels through 5 cards at a time. So 3 of them, it's a card that even though a character played it, we cap it at 2 for practical reasons. And to be honest, his deck really, it doesn't seem hurt by it. His deck is pretty thorough, and it's not really missing a lot like, the remainder of the Big Five, who really did not have a lot of key cards printed. Pretty much all of Leichter's cards exist in the TCG, OCG. But anyway, so Cyber Jar, favorite card of mine, just, always fun. Knee flip Cyber Jar. Dream Sprite. He had several monsters that did something during the battle phase of being attacked or attacking. And, it was interesting the way his monsters worked. Not all of them really seem to be part of an overall cohesive strategy. Some of them just seem to show up at the right time in a duel. But, I mean, all it really does is just redirect an attack. But again, they all do... His attack-based monsters do various things. This one redirects the attack to one of your monsters, and he definitely has monsters that you don't want to run into if they're not your attack target. Next up is Fire Princess. So, it's like, again, his other thing was life points. This would inflict some damage while he was gaining life points, and he was always gaining life points because of his combination strategy with Lily and Imperial Order, and that he had cards where he paid down life points, he had cards to make up for that life point loss, and then Fire Princess, which just kind of gets rolled in there and does a little extra damage. Hero Shadow Scout. Okay, so a card he actually played only 1 copy, which is not something we do frequently, but again, because this is actually like Leichter's deck 2.5, something we learned from the original Leichter's deck was that Hero Scout was not a very helpful card. It just kind of helps your opponent. I mean, it can be helpful because it will cost your opponent spell cards. At the same time, if they're not spell cards, you're giving your opponent a draw. And because it can't protect itself in any capacity like many of its other monsters can, it really just ends up being, run over. So again, with the testing that we had done, this card was actually a weakness of his deck. You gave your opponent a draw, and it couldn't stand up for itself in any other way. If it had some better stats, it would be different, but it just ends up being... The problem with the old Leichter deck, the original one, was, it really just, it couldn't summon much of anything because it couldn't keep monsters on the board. Now this one does a much better job. But one monster that is always hard to get over and always, a good fan favorite of me in Delta 2, is Injection Fairy Lily. So, it's an old card. It's a great card, though. And again, it's his major life point cost right there, pay 2,000, but it goes up to be stronger than a Blue Eyes. So it was very key card for Leichter in his duel with Kaiba, or just in general. And now, the big one, Jinzo. And like all the deck masters, they are in triplicate. Although with a lot of these decks, in order to give them enough cards, a lot of cards are in triplicate. But in even decks where we could play back and forth, our golden rule is deck masters and deck master effect cards, which this deck does still have, are in triplicate. So Jinzo's deck master effect was essentially its own effect, but that it only targeted your opponent's cards. Thankfully for us, Konami made a card called Amplifier, which does just that. But, so, Leichter Jinzo, 3 copies. It's also a card in Joey's deck, Esperoba's deck, so we did see plenty of Jinzo in the anime. It was not a one-off exclusive to Leichter. But I like this Leichter did it pretty well, because he definitely took advantage of Jinzo's ability more than anyone else really did. Especially because if you watch the Kaiba deck profile for the virtual world, he did actually have a fair amount of traps. So, Leichter's Jinzo, and as we come and call it, Leichter's Lock, or the Leichter Lock, really did hurt Kaiba. Satellite Cannon. It's his big bad boss, so we kept it too. Very interesting card. It can be attacked but not destroyed by monsters that are 7 or lower. And in the anime, it was it was in space, so weak monsters couldn't reach it. Hence why Blue Eyes was able to fly all the way up and destroy it. Although, again, Blue Eyes is an 8-star monster, so that's rationalized in that capacity. But this is the monster. If you can just sit on it a few turns and starts building attack and building attack and building attack, assuming you can protect it from other things, it can be devastating if used to its fuller potential. And then this last monster, again, another battle phase card or battle related card, is Unhappy Maiden. So that when she's sent to the graveyard as a result of battle, hey, battle phase magically ends. So this, Dream Sprite, Lily, and Satellite Cannon, all in some way, their effects work, during the battle phase. And then again, Satellite Cannon, where it can't be destroyed by weak monsters. So again, his monsters have a little bit of a similarity. Again, I'm not calling it a theme or strategy, but they happen to have effects that when something's attacked or it can end the battle phase, it can redirect the attack, it can gain attack, it can't be destroyed. Spell time. So like I said, Amplifier. In 3. Because that's the Deckmaster effect. So combo with Jinzo, and Jinzo does not negate your traps. Also, very important text in this card effect, which is what allows the Leichter Lock to exist and this was definitely done intentionally. And I'm just gonna again just read it word for word to clarify, because we've gotten questions about the card's activation in regards to Imperial Order. And although if you had an Imperial Order with a Jinzo, it would be negated, but because of how Amplifier works with Imperial Order. And that is, again, this very, very, very last line that says, this card's activation and effect cannot be negated by any other card. So very few cards in the game have that, unconditional, you cannot stop this from happening type of thing. But Amplifier is one of them. So when you have this Jinzo and Imperial Order, it'll negate every spell card but Amplifier. Because otherwise it gets into a thing. Amplifier is negated by Imperial Order, which means Jinzo negates Imperial Order, which means Amplifier is reactivated, and then it becomes a... So to avoid the headache of a confusion, there, Esperoba did have an Amplifier card, but it boosted Jinzo's attack. It did not... I mean, it was that same type of helmet thing, but it boosted Jinzo's attack. It did not really do what this Amplifier does. So, but anyway, so that ends up being the Deckmaster effect, and him and Crump share that their respective Deckmasters actually do carry some or all of the effect of the Deckmaster, whereas the other guys have normal monsters that just do really strange things. So his emergency provisions, which is great for, getting rid of anything unnecessary to really quickly gain more life points. It's in a few characters' decks, more in GX if you guys have it, but we really didn't see much of it around except for Leichter, who his deck had an interesting way of working between gaining life points, monsters that were had tricks in battle. 2-pot of greed. We don't always do 2-pot of greed. We do try to limit it to 1. Leichter was an exception, again, also because of the way his deck is, that it can be slow to get started. Once he gets started, it's a full swing. It's very hard to beat. But the problem was, too, is that sometimes he wouldn't get a start right away, and then it made for very disappointing duels. So, 2-pot of greed. But that's really his only generic card. He was the first one where we introduced Sevic's Blessing, which is a great card if you can get it off, but really, not very frequent, but not a frequent occurrence. When you attack, it's a quick play spell, of course. When you attack directly to your opponent and inflict damage, you get an equal amount as life points. So, it definitely can be a good source of life points, but not the most reliable. And that's it for the spells. There's not a whole lot there, but what he lacks in spells, he makes up for in a more cohesive strategy than most characters. Like, I keep reiterating the strategy, Electro Lock. There was a much more cohesive strategy and plan with his deck than a lot of characters, where Yugi has strategies, but it's like Dark Paladin plus Diffusion Wave Motion. So on to the traps. 2 Imperial Order. Again, limited to 2 for obvious reasons. And one of the few cards were actually costing life points, but, negating the rest of Kaiba's spells was worth it. Alright, next up, and this is a very key card, Life Absorbing Machine. So basically, during a standby phase, Leichter gets back half of what he paid last turn. So, really, really helpful with especially Lily, that he'll gain back 1,000 from that. But with his next trap, every turn, bring him even more life points. Which, I'm sure you guys have probably guessed already. It's not like it's supposed to be a surprise or secret, but Solemn Wishes. Draw a card, or cards, gain 500 life points. Again, to clarify, so if you have Pot Greed, it's 500 totally, because it's for each occurrence of drawing, not each card drawn. But again, that is a great way to get life points, because it's guaranteed 500 a turn, unless you, of course, the card's gone, but And his last card is Regulation of Tribe. It's really his only defensive trap card. And, you know, you've seen us use this in Yugi's deck a lot. You throw it up, you call a type. Usually it's whatever one type is attacking, or whatever one it would, do the most damage. Stop the attack. Your next turn, you don't care to pay because it was just a one-off negate attack, and then you toss it. So it's really just a one-off defensive trap card. I mean, of course, it can be used in the long run, but for the most part, it saves you in that one moment. But that's it. That's really, everything in Leichter's deck. It's a very simple deck as far as the styles of cards, but they, again, do form a really workable strategy that we've seen in a few games. But anyway, like, comment, subscribe, keep watching because we're doing, next up is just a few more virtual world decks, and then we're on to the tournament. And that is going to be so much fun. See you guys.